Hey YouTube, it's Justin, aka Demonic Sweaters, back again with another electronic drum video. Today we've got a product review. As you can see, sitting right behind me there is the brand new Simmons SD1250 electronic drum set. This is Simmons' highest end or top of the line drum kit that they offer today. And thanks to Simmons for sending this to me. They did send it for free, but I'm still going to give you my honest opinion of this drum set. So I'm really excited about it though. It's a really huge box. The SD1250, from what I've seen online, seems like a really cool kit for the money, but we're gonna find out. So I'm gonna open this huge box up and put this thing together, and we'll see how it does. Before we do though, be sure to follow me on Spotify. There's some links down below. You can check out Demonic Sweaters music there, as well as my Bandcamp page, which is anthillrecordings.bandcamp.com. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started on unboxing this awesome drum set. Now this is something I really like to see, and that is that this rack is largely put together already. Because I put together several electronic drum sets like this one over here, which is the Avatar, what's the model of this thing? I don't know, I did a video on it, but it's actually pretty good. But I had to put together the entire rack piece by piece, which is pretty time consuming. I really like seeing that a lot of the major sections of it are already pre-assembled. That should make things a lot easier. Over here are a lot of the boxes, individual boxes of all the different parts, all the different toms and kick tower and module and all that stuff are there. I'm going to unbox those after I finish getting everything out of here. So I got the rack out of the box, and it's not just partially assembled, it's completely assembled, which is amazing. I love that. That really makes my job so much easier. Honestly, I was kind of dreading coming over here and having to put this whole thing together. But now seeing that this rack is already put together, I think it's gonna make my job a lot easier. And plus the rack itself looks really nice. It's definitely like aluminum or something because it's actually really light, but it feels super solid. Yeah, so I'm gonna go continue putting this together. All right, there's the kit all set up. And this thing honestly looks really, really nice. When you get it all set up, it looks kind of badass. Yeah, I love the color scheme, like the gray and silver and black. I think it looks really good with the white heads and everything. I'm gonna play, don't worry, get some sound, but I just wanted to give you some initial thoughts that I had here. Number one, it doesn't come with a bass drum pedal, so you'll have to provide your own, which is fine, like, given that it gives you so much else, I don't really mind that it doesn't come with a bass drum pedal. Unfortunately, here at the school, I only had this other kind of generic one that I could put on here for the time being until I can bring over something better. I'm probably going to bring over a double kick and put it on there. The hi-hat pedal feels very nice. I actually really like the hi-hat pedal. It's got a nice soft, like cushiony feel, and the splash function works good. The cymbals I also really like, especially the ride. I think the ride triggers absolutely excellently. It's got 3 zones, has a bell zone, bow zone, and edge zone. The crashes are both dual zone. All the toms and snare are all dual zone, so you have a lot of sounds to play with. My only real criticism, at least with the initial, I was playing for about a half an hour here, screwing around with different sounds and stuff, is the distance of the crash cymbals. you really can't pull them in any closer because they're actually pretty small. They're 12-inch crashes, and they're kind of far away, actually. I mean, I can play them fine, but I'm a full-grown, man. And so, like, when my students get in here tomorrow and we start playing, I know it's going to be a bit of a reach for them, for some of them. Of course, you can always sit in closer, but it would be nice if there was like an extra boom. I mean, you could just add a boom arm to these and extend it out a little bit further, but it would be nice if it came with those, just to give you a little more flexibility as to where you can put these cymbals, the crash cymbals. The ride cymbal is fine exactly where it is. It doesn't bother me at all. You can move things side to side, but the crashes you can't because they're just basically on the corner posts of the rack. So you really can't move them. The hi-hat you can move around, the module. Snare drum comes on its own. It comes with a stand, which is really nice. The snare drum stand is actually quite nice. And the snare drum itself is pretty cool. It's a 12-inch snare, it's big. It gives you dual zones. I did have to go into the module and adjust the sensitivity. The default settings were, for me, not ideal, but it does have a lot of settings that you can tweak inside of the module. Real quickly, I can show you. Just press utility, and then in here, you can go into trigger settings, and then you have your various trigger settings in here. Sensitivity, threshold, velocity curve, re-trigger, and crosstalk. Splash sensitivity for your hi-hat. There is no scan time or mask time feature, which is unfortunate. Like, that's a pretty useful setting to have, especially if you planned on using this module on for something other than these pads. But you can dial them in pretty good with the settings they give you and the pads that they provide. The snare drum has this proprietary plug, which is basically like an Ethernet cable that goes into the cable snake right here, which is kind of weird. I don't know how necessary that is. I mean, I guess, after watching Justin from 65 Drums video, he took his apart, and there's actually like a chip down inside of there in the snare drum that, allows you to, or that requires them to use this proprietary cable, I guess. But, whatever, it's fine. It works. The kick drum tower feels really good, but the sensitivity, or the threshold actually, was really, really kind of weird when I first hooked it up. So I had to increase my threshold to basically stop it from double triggering. Well, not double triggering, but just picking up every little tap that I would basically just barely touch it and it would pick it up. Now, one thing that's interesting is threshold on this module works backwards. If you go down here, threshold, up is actually lower, and down, like a higher number is lower, and then a lower number is higher. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's just how it is. The other thing that is kind of weird is if you're making settings, to your, like in the utility function here, if you're changing some settings, and while you're in this menu, if you try to play the drums while you have that menu open on the module, everything kind of behaves strangely. Like, it doesn't really trigger accurately or anything like that. You get weird pauses between hitting, but it only happens when you're on this screen. So if you actually go back to the main menu, like kit here, and then play, it's totally fine. So I don't know if that's a bug or what. And it's not a big deal. I mean, it's just kind of like a little bit annoying because anytime you want to make a, change to the settings and really want to dial in the triggers, you have to go back to the main menu to really test your, your changes to make sure that it's working right. Because if you stay in that other menu, then it's just kind of wonky. But it works. The other thing is, this was something that Justin from 65 Drums had noticed too, is the kits, the EQ, or not the EQ, but the levels between the different drum kits seem to be pretty different. Some of them, the toms are loud, some of them the toms are quieter, some of them the hi-hats and cymbals are louder. So you have to kind of tweak them a little bit, which again isn't that big of a deal. You have faders here, so you can make level adjustments pretty easily. And the way these work is if you press this fader button, you can go through, down here you're adjusting, basically when the light is here, you can adjust the kick, snare, toms, hi-hat, and crash. And if you press it again, this kind of confused me in the beginning. First, it goes to this tuning, like all these other parameters here. So these are all tuning and filter and shape. So tuning changes the whole pitch of the entire drum set, which is kind of cool. Actually, that's really cool because you can drastically change the sounds if you want. And then it also has a filter, which is pretty nice. You know, you can make the drum sound underwater or very bright. It has a shape, which is kind of like a EQ, like a general EQ, and then it has EQ high and EQ low. But if you press that again, then you get on your other level section. So the ride, tom 4, crash 2, accompaniment, and click are right there. So pretty easy to get to all that stuff once you know how to do it. To scroll through the kits, you can either use the big wheel or the plus and minus symbol. It has an exit button, just like Roland modules. So anytime you get to like somewhere, if you get lost, you can just press exit and get out of there. Utility is where you make all of your fine tuning, tweaking settings. Tempo and metronome are all over here. It has Bluetooth. I haven't tested that yet, but I'm going to. Oh, over here on the side, okay, we have our headphone volume and our master volume. And I like the fact that they're two separate volumes. That's nice. And then on the other side, you have your crash 2 input and your tom 4 input, as well as your USB stick input right there. And then on the back, we have our MIDI input and output, standard MIDI input and output, which is nice. It has a USB MIDI, your 9-volt input, the outputs left and right, as well as auxiliary input. And then a separate volume knob for the auxiliary input, which also I quite like that. That's a very nice touch. So overall, the module is very decent. You know, the sounds are hit or miss, I think. Some of them sound pretty good. Some of them are kind of not so great. Some of them are just outright weird. But I actually kind of like that because you can really, you know, that tells me there's a lot of stuff you could tweak in here. There's a lot of internal sounds. You could probably build some custom kits that are pretty insane if you wanted to, which makes this thing a lot of fun. You could actually really play around with this kit and have a lot of fun with it, I'm sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Here we go. Now, I am just having way too much fun with this thing. Now, this set actually has kind of exceeded my expectations a little bit. There is a lot of crazy sounds inside of this module. As you can hear in that little demo I did there, I tried to edit, to give you guys some of the good drum sounds as well as just some of the completely insane sounds that are inside of this module. There is so much stuff to experiment with in here. If you're into doing that, like I am, just kind of playing around with sounds and building custom kits and doing just weird stuff, experimenting with equipment, this thing is actually really, really good for that. It's crazy. Like, the sounds are just completely nuts inside of this thing. And some of the actual acoustic drum sounds are pretty decent too, or some of them are quite good actually. I like the snares a lot. A lot of the snare drums I like. The hi-hats are probably the weakest, I think, but they're not terrible. They're not as bad as like an Alesis Nitro or Crimson or anything like that. And the toms all, there's some tom sounds I really like, some of them I didn't like so much. Cymbals, there's a wide variety of stuff. The drums themselves trigger pretty nicely, or above average, I'd say, above like your, inexpensive entry-level drums, but not quite as good as like a Roland set or a Yamaha set or something like that, but that's to be expected. But, I haven't really gone into the module and tweaked it like really, really seriously, and maybe it will trigger as good as a Roland or something like that. I wasn't having any troubles with double triggering or anything. The main thing is the kick drum pad is just way too sensitive, so you have to turn down the sensitivity. But once you do that, it's totally fine. The rack is amazing. It's very solid. And yeah, how much are these things going for right now? Let me see. So currently the SD1250 selling for $10.99, which is basically like 1,100 bucks. I have seen them go on sale. They were on sale right before Christmas for I think $9 something. So I think even at $1,000, it's a pretty decent deal. Or it's a really good deal actually. It gives you a lot of bang for your buck. You have a lot of drums, 3 cymbals, 3-zone ride, dual zone crashes, nice pretty big hi-hats. The rack is great, the drums are decent sizes. Even having 8-inch toms up top here doesn't really bother me at all. Having the 12-inch snare is really nice. I really love that feature. And the 2 10-inch floor toms down there are really cool too. Overall, this thing is actually really good. I'm quite impressed with it. Make sure you update the firmware. That'll take care of any of the glitches that the original version of the software had. Once I updated mine, it's working perfectly. Now, my next test is to try the USB output with Superior Drummer 3. So let's see how that does. All right, so Superior Drummer 3 worked perfectly. I just selected the MIDI preset for the SD1200. There isn't one for the 1250 in SD3 just yet, but it seemed to work just fine. Everything was mapped perfectly. I didn't have to change anything. USB output worked really, really well. I was plugged right into Reaper. I was getting very, very good latency, or very low latency. As you could tell, I had no problems playing in real time. I didn't edit that afterwards. That was actually me playing as I had it plugged into Superior Drummer through Reaper, and I thought it performed really, really well. So this drum kit, aside from not coming with a bass drum pedal, gives you a lot of stuff for $1,000. I really do think it is worth it, actually. You know, it depends on what you're looking for. If you want something that is more, you know, basically some standard drum sounds you don't want to mess around with too much, then maybe go for one of the lower end Roland kits or one of the Yamaha kits that, you know, they're less pieces and they have a more basic setup, but the module will give you pretty much a pretty standard sound right out of the box. This module maybe you have to play with a little bit more, you know, out of the box, but still, I think it's really cool for what it is. You know, it gives you a lot of parts. You have a big snare, you have 4 toms, you have 2 crashes, a 3-zone ride, 12-inch hi-hat, or wait, are those 10-inch? Sorry, 10-inch hi-hats and 10-inch cymbals. I think I called those 12 earlier, but they're all 10s, except for the ride cymbal over here, which is a 12, or 13, somewhere around there. Anyway, the module is cool. It's, you know, it's kind of weird, but in a good way. I kind of like it. It's got a lot of interesting stuff in there, and I like the fact that it has, you know, a mixer on the front. Overall, it's a really good buy. I do think that Simmons did a good job on this kit. This is probably their best kit. All right, let's talk about updating the firmware for the SD1250. Now there's 2 files you're going to need to download from the website, from the Simmons website. One of them is the actual firmware updater, and the other one is the firmware itself. So I've actually gone ahead and downloaded those already on my computer here. I'm using a MacBook Pro. And let's go ahead and open up the Simmons firmware updater. Select the module that you have connected. In my case, it's an SD1250. And then I'm going to browse and find the firmware file that I downloaded, which is here in my downloads folder somewhere. And before you browse to that file, what you're going to need to do is actually unzip the firmware, because the firmware updater won't allow you to use a zip file. So let's go ahead and unzip it first. And then what you do is you browse to the SD1250 bin file. Go ahead and open that. And hopefully this will work. Let's click update and see what happens. Okay, it says writing 50%. And that was actually quite fast. Let's see, your firmware has been updated. Unplug your module, then switch it back on while holding plus and minus. You can now quit this app. Okay, so let's do that. Unplug it. Hold down plus and minus, plug it back in, and turn on the module. And there we go. Worked. All right, so my final thoughts on the Simmons SD1250 is actually, I think this thing is pretty awesome. It's definitely worth $1,000 if you're looking for a drum kit in that price range for an electronic kit. Its strengths are the fact that it gives you a lot of drums, gives you a big snare drum, gives you hi-hat, 2 crashes, and a 3-zone ride cymbal, which is really nice. It has 2 10-inch floor toms, which is also really nice. The 8-inch rack toms, you know, they're actually not too bad. Usually I'm not a big fan of 8-inch drums, but combined with the other sizes, you don't even really notice these top toms are 8-inch. They work just fine. My only real criticism is the distance of the crashes. As I said before, for me, you know, I can play them like that, but if you're buying this for a smaller child, they might have some issues reaching those crashes because you can't really pull them in any closer. The module is really cool, actually. I'm very impressed with this module. I wouldn't say that it's the greatest sounding module I've ever heard, but the fact that it has so many sounds in it and you can tweak so much in it gives you a lot to experiment with in there. And if you're somebody like me who likes to experiment with sounds and have fun with this stuff, this is actually a really fun toy. Like, I was playing around with this thing for like an hour and a half You know, I had to edit that video down a lot of me playing just because I was having so much fun playing with all the different sounds that are in this module. I like the fact that it has a iPad holder on it. That's also really nice. That'll come in very handy for teaching. The hi-hat pedal feels really good. It comes with a snare drum stand. The only thing it doesn't come with, like I said before, is the bass drum pedal, and but that's okay. And it's a little bit unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. Bass drum pedals aren't that expensive. You can get one for like 40 bucks. It's pretty decent. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. I think Simmons did a great job on this kit. I look forward to making some more videos about it. Anyway, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon, and I'll see you guys really soon. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them down below. If you have a Simmons SD1250, let me know what you think about it. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. See you guys really soon. Later.